Jordan. All right. Welcome everyone to another session of Wisely Summit Program 2022. So tonight's session will be our final panel format session. And the title, as you can see on slide right now, is Innovative Grassroot Funding for Climate Solutions. So it is a bit mouthful, but fret not, because we have experts in the house to delve into this conversation in a very friendly manner with us tonight, so we can learn about this topic a bit more. So next slide, please, Jordan. All right, so for today's session, we have three panel speakers, as well as moderator Dina. So I'll be introducing Dina first, and then passing over the time to Dina to introduce the speakers as well as to run the session. So Dina is the head of sustainable energy at the Department of Energy in Brunei and was previously the head of Brunei Climate Change Secretariat. And she was also a US ASEAN Fulbright visiting scholar at the Joint Program on the Science and Policy of Global Change at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in United States of America. We're very glad to have another US education program alumni with us. So it's a very different program, but again, another emerging young leader from Southeast Asia to lead the session today. So Dina, passing over the time to you.
Hi, sorry. Hi, thank you very much, Katrina. Very good evening to participants, speakers for this session. So my name is Dina, the head of Sustainable Energy at the Department of Energy of Brunei. I'm very glad to be here to be moderating this session this evening. So just as a reminder, so we are at this session for innovative grassroots funding for climate solutions. So this is part of the YCLIS Summit, which is themed Empowering Technology for a Green Future. So we have three speakers this evening. So we have representative from ASEAN Secretariat to give us an overview of intergovernmental perspective in terms of grassroots funding for climate solution. And we also have a representative from a government level coordination body, the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat. And we also have from private sector, from New Energy Nexus Southeast Asia. So I'll just introduce very briefly our speakers for this evening. So we have Dr. Wong Sok. So Dr. Wong Sok is the head of environmental section of the ASEAN Secretariat. So he is very passionate and dedicated environmental professional with over 20 years of global environment compliance and governance experience. And he has been working extensively on environmental management in Southeast Asia in close collaboration with government agencies, international organizations, and development partners, CSOs, and also communities through his current role. So we'll be hearing from Dr. Wong later on his line of work from the ASEAN Secretariat and how ASEAN Secretariat's involvement is on this topic tonight. And then we also have our next speaker, Mr. Zaim Halbi, who is currently leading the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat based at the Ministry of Development. He is responsible for the implementation of the 10 key strategies set out under the Brunei National Climate Change Policy. And he also the lead negotiator for Brunei Darussalam delegation to the UNFCCC. He is an experienced energy professional with over 10 years in the oil and gas industry. So we'll be hearing from Mr. Zaim later on in terms of the on the Brunei experience in terms of grassroots funding on climate solutions. And then lastly, we'll be hearing from Mr. Stanley Ng, who is the Program Director for New Energy Nexus Southeast Asia. So he works with universities, companies, and governments to support climate technologies to enable the transition to a clean energy economy. He has a digital technology and energy innovation background with experience in renewables, climate tech startups, digital media, and IT advisory. So we'll be hearing from Mr. Stanley very soon. Okay, so I think without further ado, we'll invite our first speaker for this evening, Dr. Vong. So Dr. Vong, if you can just share with us the role of ASEAN Secretariat or any experience in the topic around innovative grassroots funding for climate solution. And I believe that you have a slide to share with us. So I pass you the floor. Please, Dr. Vong. And it's good to see you, Dr. Vong.
Thank you very much, Dina. It's great to see you. I think I'm on, on my holiday, but I mean, it's a great pleasure to join you all because I think youth is quite important to me, and I also used to be youth. And I see if something that the key people not really join the youth, I feel not. I experience myself. I feel not good. So that's why I try to make my time to join you all, even I'm really at at the road to a province, but I mean it's I just stopped by somewhere that managed to join you all. So I think it's a very good evening to everyone, and particularly a well introduction from Dina, and also to the panelist member Zaim, and also to Stanley. That is it's a good experience that complement what we can do from the innovative funding or grassroots sort of funding. So I myself, Wong Sok, the head of environment division, so would like to share with you from regional perspective how the regional perspective can translate, can support, and can make things work for the access to finance aspect. With that, I would like also to share with you the presentation that we make. This to make you easy to follow, and of course, this not limit. If you have any specific question, I try my best to answer to the youth team. And I mean, wisely, it just it's not just one time I attend a number of events in different places, and that is the opportunity that I would like to share with you all. Next slide, please. So specifically, I think it is about ASEAN sort of cooperation or environment. That is the way we can make use this sort of environmental window as the way to access to finance. Next, please. So next, please. This is about ASEAN overall. So I may not go to detail, but I mean you can understand well how ASEAN doing. We have 10 ASEAN member states. Join together different time, but I mean at the end we are together to guide the success of the ASEAN. That with the ASEAN 2025 forging ahead together with the mother document beyond the after the ASEAN Charter. So with that we have a three economic pillar. Importantly, you can see from the AACC ASEAN social cultural pillar, which is the pillar where environment and issue and climate change are there. But I mean also we have ASEAN social, ASEAN political security and economic community as well. Another side, you see the right-hand side about the initiative for the ASEAN integration. You know, we have a new member of ASEAN. I mean, like, you know, the CLMV country, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Laos. So that is the way we have to speed up the new member to ASEAN pace in order to catch up where the opportunity and where we can harmonize our development. Next, please. So this is to show you under the ASEAN social cultural community, it's the number of sector. As you may see that social cultural quite 2-3 words, but This the sector spell out from agriculture, from the culture, information, from the environment. You see the below one, you see the AME on the right-hand side below circle, the AME, yes. And also we have the COP of the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Health Contracting Party. This is specifically under environment sort of sector. Next, please. So ASEAN cooperate on environment, it just not happened just now. It's been a long time, but I mean, the way it happened is prioritize, also focus, depend upon the time that we were. But I mean here, the new ASEAN strategic plan on environment spell out clearly, which is the way we refer to ASEAN blueprint itself, that have a clear characteristic. You can see 1, C2, C3, C4, which is about the environmental sort of matter. Among other, from that, the ASEAN strategic plan on environment will identify strategic priority 7, which is consists of, from the nature, coastal up to the environmental education, where it is the foundation of the people-centered approach to guide the success of environmental sort of protection and participation of different key players. With that, I mean, we also try to understand where we are at with the international sort of commitment. I mean, like SDG, CBD, all the sort of multilateral environmental agreement, including the BR, Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention as well. Next, please. Here it is. This is just about the ASEAN cooperation on environment institutional framework. As you can see from the circle, we have ASEAN agreement on transboundary haze and the AME, ASEAN Ministerial ASEAN meeting on Minister on Environment, AME. So this under the AME side, we're not talking about the conference of party or ASEAN agreement haze. That is treat another window, because this specific mechanism to address the transboundary issue of haze pollution. So under this sort of as climate change is embedded specifically within the general sort of environmental issue. This under the AME, ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Environment, and then with the senior sort of guidance from the ASEAN Senior Official Meeting on Environment, the ASEAN. And then we have a specific technical working group on the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change. So this is the governance structure that we work, bring all ASEAN member states together at different level, from technical level to the management policy and policy level. Next, please. So this is about ASEAN cooperation on climate change. So I not need to explain. I think from you, you have a different sort of information, and also from different sort of media system that inform you about this sort of climate change impact in our region. So I no need to highlight that. It's plenty of material you can get from the journal article or many other things, all from empirical sort of or experience of the community itself. So it's really problematic with the change of the climate pattern, including the temperature, precipitation, flood and storm. You can see the statistic of flood and storm and happen in ASEAN region under AHA Center. It's significant, over 80%. That is really the result of the climate change. Next, please. So this is about the vulnerability and predict impact. I mean that the risk and impact happened in the past and also continues and going to be increased significantly in the next, in the decade. So it's not end. Even we try to say a lot in the UNFCCC Convention and Paris sort of agreement, and try to harmonize with the multilateral environmental agreement with the CBD and so on. But I think we may not be able to stop with the increase of the of climate variability and also the impact on risk of climate change. So this is the situation of ASEAN. So I will not provide you in one by two when you have spare time. Next, please. So this is the core theme. I mean, look from the core theme itself, I can say 3 or 4 areas that you may need to retain. One, I mean, climate change, we also, from environment perspective, from ASEAN side, we also focus at the adaptation because we are the region that also remain important to the primary sector. I mean, agriculture, land use, and so on. So adaptation, one of the most important because some communities still very poor and rely on the primary resources and also on the natural resources as well. So adaptation, one of the key things, but also be mindful as a part of the way GHG emission happen to the, to the climate change as a climate induced factor. So this is the way we also address the mitigation aspect. And with that, we have also the thinking of the MOV and also the technology transfer. But you may see the two elements important. One on the climate finance and market. So this is the one that fit into your today event. While the cross-sectoral coordination, where where the flow of the communication and the communication of the funding and so on may happen, or partnership development. So money is not just only from one side; it can become from multiple sources and come from multiple sort of levels. So that's depend upon the cross-sectoral sort of coordination. Next, please. So the climate change is cross-cutting issue. As you can see, I mean, it's not on that the way we highlight for your reference. I mean, it just not happen within climate change per climate change, as many people said. But I mean, climate change happen in various sectors, forestry, energy, transport, and so on and so forth. And then the way happen also from the city, that is also the one of GHG emission, and also the one most vulnerable to the climate change, particularly coastal urban environment. Next, please. So this ASEAN commitment with international sort of level, with the leadership of ASEAN chairmanship of Singapore, that we have a special ASEAN ministerial meeting on climate action, where we take stock all the key sort of outcome, achievement, or challenge of ASEAN, and also we try to map out the way forward as well. That is toward the UNFCCC COP 24 that ASEAN joined together. Next, please. So this is also under the Thailand chairmanship. I mean, that Thailand also, Prime Minister of Thailand also deliver also the key message from ASEAN climate action in the UN Climate Action Summit 2019 in New York. Next, please. Wow, now we talk about youth participate in various sort of activity environment sector and have been defined differently, but I mean, we prioritize youth as a key player and the future of ASEAN. So that the way we have youth and environment as a one inclusive sort of consideration from ASEAN perspective. Next, please. So you can see there is it's a lot of fun, but I mean hard work as well. I mean a lot of capacity building engagement. So that's you have some opportunity from the formal sort of ASEAN arrangement, but this is not a limit window for you. You can explore, you can join other things that from other sector as well that organize for youth contribute to the climate change or environmental sort of protection. Next, please. This is the +3 also the way we have, it's happened in 2019 in Phuket, that the way we clean the beach, that the one that also in line with the Bangkok Declaration on the combating marine debris. Next, please. So this is the ASEAN Youth Climate Action Initiative, ASEAN Youth Can under the Brunei chairmanship last year, and Dina is one of the key players with Zaim also, I think is well known, and also some of you participate in this ASEAN You Can. So this provides a great platform that you can have this sort of wide and opportunity to talk to the minister and also to bring this sort of important youth decision. I mean, the Bandar Seri Begawan Declaration on ASEAN Youth for Climate Action. That's one of the most important. I think even all the ministers read that sort of declaration and some key message really bring to the heart of the minister and for their consideration and streamline that sort of opportunity for youth to share this sort of action in the future of ASEAN. Next, please. So that's the last. Yeah. So I mean, this the way I would like also to introduce you a number of opportunity for you to participate. And but I just in interest of time, I just would like to focus on the climate financing from the grassroots level. I mean, from ASEAN level, sort of regional perspective. I mean, we don't have this sort of specific dealing with the grassroots level, but I mean, two things that I just reiterate early. It's about the climate financing. It doesn't happen by itself. It happens if you have a good coordination and communication with different sort of players. So I mean, the player here, it can be private sector, it can be the civil society and NGO or the UN agency, or the also you know, the other key player in the region that's not necessary from the government. So also some government also provide that funding us to the community and the student or the youth to contribute to environment sort of protection, monitoring, or reporting. So I think the money is not only from the public, also from the multilateral environmental development agencies such as the Asian Development Bank, World Bank, or Green Finance, GCF, Green Climate Finance, or GEF, Global Environment Facility. So the number of opportunity there. I think how to make that happen. I mean, my key message is about the way you should, you know, reach out and talk and communicate, coordinate, and that's the way you can make that more impact to the region, but also to access and make it sustainable for your project. So with that, I think I would like to encourage all of you to take more in terms of, you know, role in close communication, coordination. It's not only rely on the social media or rely on the digital sort of platform. I think the face-to-face meeting, the face-to-face presentation, I may say this one of key critical. And I know all of you take the opportunity of digital technology, but that's not undermine the classical sort of communication that will come up with a clear sort of build trust and also, you know, and provide a clear expression of youth vision and leadership. So this is the key message here. I just say that from ASEAN side, ASEAN Secretariat look forward to strengthen multi-sectoral collaboration with all actors and particularly youth for better response to the global climate change, but also youth, as I said earlier, the future of ASEAN. ASEAN youth is a vital asset that play a key role to safeguarding our environment, contributing to realization of clean and green ASEAN. So that's in line with the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. That's the way we also need to build a stronger, resilient community of ASEAN. So with that, I wish you all the best of your endeavor and reach out more. This is a reference material for you to consult if you need additional information. Thank you very much. I give the floor back to Dina.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vong. Thank you very much for such an inspiring talk. So we'll now invite our second speaker, Mr. Zaim Halbi, to share some insights on how Brunei is addressing climate change and perhaps some connection to today's topic on Grassroot. Yeah, you have the floor now, Mr. Zaim.
Hi. Thank you very much, Dina, and thank you very much for actually having me here on this platform. It's my very first time, so I feel honored and really humbled at this opportunity. And it's also nice to see Dr. Vong Sok, who I've only met in two-dimensional format so far. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity to see him in 3D. So it's really a baton handover, just like in real life, where Dina is my predecessor as the head of the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat. I don't have any slides, so I'm going to talk through, make this a conversation. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out, voice out, and let me know. So Brunei was the ASEAN chair last year, and as part of that chairmanship, I wanted to share some of the things that Brunei has done since, and how has that encouraged grassroots funding. As part of the chairmanship last year, Brunei has come up with the initiative of establishing the ASEAN Center for Climate Change in Brunei Darussalam. So the very first ASEAN Center of its kind. This ASEAN Center will be the hub or the central knowledge for any research, publication, and anything to do with climate change for the whole of ASEAN. So as the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, we have already begun actively working on this, with the support of the other ASEAN member states. And as Dr. Wong Sok had pointed out earlier, we have done it through consultations through the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change. So you see that this is a collaboration and definitely not done in silos. And we also have the Brunei National Climate Change Policy, which some of you may be more familiar with, which was launched in 2020. And it outlines the 10 key strategies to reduce our emissions here in Brunei by 20% from business as usual levels by 2030. And this is where I actually want to take a moment to recognize Dina Yahya and the team who came previously before mine, for the good work that they've done to really raise climate change consciousness amongst the public in Brunei Darussalam. Since the BNCCP was rolled out, we have been able to gain traction and bought it and got more buy-in from various members of the public, be it in the government sector, private sector, NGOs, and of course, what excites me the most, amongst the members of the youth. So we see this traction and this voice coming out, and it's getting louder and louder and louder. So really appreciate that. Also in 2021, another new initiative that was rolled out was what we call the Protocol Hijau, or translated is the Green Protocol. Protocol Hijau is another initiative where it outlines the steps that needs to be implemented in such a way that the government of Brunei Darussalam could be the best example to achieve the national targets set out by the Brunei National Climate Change Policy, or the BNCCP. Just to put some numbers there and why we decided to start with the government sector actually contributes an estimated 23% of total greenhouse gas emissions and electricity consumption, as well as much as 25% of the total national water consumption as a whole. So you see that the government itself is a big end user of all these resources. So we firmly believe that the government should be the first person or the first agency to lead by example. So with all that's been happening, with the launch of the BNCCP, the climate promotions, the Protocol Hijau, and of course the announcement of the ASEAN Center for Climate Change, we've had people knocking on our doors quite a bit, wanting to partner up, trying to understand how they can play a role, how they can contribute. So one of the things that we signed this year, actually just about a month or so ago, is a memorandum of understanding between the government of His Majesty, through the Brunei National Council on Climate Change, and one of our local banks, one of the biggest banks actually in Brunei, called the Bank Islam Brunei Darussalam. And as part of that MOU, they will actually provide $2 billion of funding for sustainability-related projects, whether it's education, awareness campaigns, or key strategic projects. Secondly, and one thing that was actually already established last year, but it's just waiting to be rolled out, is what we call the Climate Action Fund. So this has been set up, and the idea is to encourage crowdfunding from members of the public, because they've always kept asking, hey, how can we participate? How can we be a part of this? How can we contribute, right? And sometimes, we're not privileged with time or energy, but this is one of the ways where they can actually directly contribute financially. It can be a small amount, it can be a large amount, really depending on whether it's an individual, a private company. They can actually contribute to what we call this Climate Action Fund. And of course, the collection from this fund will then be deployed for use on climate action related activities. So we're also working with the Brunei Darussalam Central Bank, where we're also planning to raise the awareness even more so, with regards to campaigns on climate financing, with partnerships with the British High Commission, Ernst & Young consultancies, and of course, other dialogue partners. As I mentioned before, Brunei is planning to establish that ASEAN Center for Climate Change, and we can't do that alone. We're working with our partners here in Brunei Darussalam. The government's providing funding, but we're also working with dialogue partners through our foreign missions here. So they themselves want to be a part of it to support not Brunei, but the whole of ASEAN. And that comes from in-kind support through expertise or also funding in this case. So how can we collaborate and actually use these type of donations? I think one thing I want to highlight here is the youth of Brunei Darussalam, right? They're very keen, they're very creative. So we're having this big event this week at the Brunei Mid-Year Conference and Exhibition. So we have the Climate Action Week, where it actually runs from yesterday all the way through to the weekend. Each day carries its own theme. So we actually have youth yesterday, and we actually ran a United Nations development program where we flew in a professional facilitator. So we actually want to use funding for those kind of things to increase awareness, increase climate promotion, partnering with ASEAN UCAN members through our local youth council and other small youth agencies. We also have the theme around mitigation to talk about decarbonization opportunities. I had the pleasure of having Dina on the panel today as well to talk about what does that mean for Brunei, what our carbon markets could look like, nature-based solutions, and what are the key strategic projects that could enable collaboration within the public and the private sectors, as well as how can we deploy these funds to make them a reality. And we'll also talk about adaptation tomorrow. And adaptation is really a really big issue. I had the pleasure of being in Bonn for the past few weeks at the subsidiary bodies meeting and negotiations. And a lot of countries, especially developing countries and ASEAN, we're talking about, climate justice, mitigation, adaptation, and climate financing that should be provided by developed countries. I think for ASEAN, for most of ASEAN as well, we have been quite fortunate where we have things under control a little bit better than other parts of the world. But there are countries where they have suffered from loss and damage in the form of infrastructure, where they're demanding for compensation. But at the same time, there's also loss and damage to life, right? So how do you put a price on that? And climate financing can't do much beyond that. So perhaps climate financing can be used to actually help fund the future, be it for schools, education, and upskilling for the newer generation from those countries. So in Brunei Darussalam, one of the things we did, to encourage participation amongst the youth is we've asked them to develop businesses, develop softwares. So one particular startup we've sort of showcased this year at that mid-year conference and exhibition is this IT company that began an app, the app is a tree planting app where we're encouraging funding. So climate financing coming into that side. Essentially, it's almost like an Uber or a Grab for tree planting. So what we're doing is we're showcasing them, we're promoting them, and hopefully climate financing and funding could also be funneled into noble causes such as these. I'll leave it at that because I know there's actually quite a bit more, but I'd rather it be a discussion later on. So if you do have any more questions, please feel free to park it, put it in the chat box, and I'm more than happy to entertain and have that discussion with you. Over back to you, Dina.
Thank you very much, Zaim. Okay, so we're now moving on to our next speaker, Mr. Stanley Ng. I'm not sure whether you're there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, so if you can just share with us in terms of what your company does, and perhaps also just share insights in terms of what you do in addressing climate change, and also if there's anything that you'd like to share specifically on grassroots participation or grassroots funding.
Absolutely. So let me just share my screen. Can you see it or not yet? Sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
It is confirmed. Yeah. Okay, great. So let me just try to full screen it. Can you see it now? Okay. So yeah, I'll talk about New Energy Nexus. We're a international organization, a global organization, with presence. Originally, we started out in California, and our organization, the main mission is to really enable entrepreneurship in the climate and energy. So in California, we started in 2004. We ran a few funds for the state, so essentially collecting taxes from utility bills and utility electricity bills.
Sorry, Stanley.
Yeah. Hello?
Hello, hi, Stanley. There's a lot of noise coming from your side.
Oh, is it?
Okay, now it's better.
Okay, I adjusted my headphones. Hopefully this never happened before, but
Yeah,
is
it's
it
fine
okay
now.
Okay, so yeah, sorry about that. So originally we started out in 2004, and in the US we run more funds for the state. So when you pay your utility bills, a tax is taken, that tax is aggregated into a fund, and then we would invest into clean energy startups and new innovations into the energy sector. In across Africa, like, so we started expanding about in 2015 across the world, because we realized that even if California as a state goes 100% net zero or 100% renewable powered, it really doesn't matter, because there's many countries with huge amount of emissions that need to be addressed. And really the climate challenge is a global challenge, right? So since 2015, we've been expanding to other countries, like doing the kind of similar programs, running business accelerators, supporting local entrepreneurs to get into the renewable energy sector. And you can see a lot of our presence is in Asia Pacific now. So overall, we've leveraged $1.5 billion into investments and grants into climate and energy startups. A lot of them are co-investments into the same companies that we would also invest in. We've supported over 1,000 clean energy enterprises across the world. So in 2006, like, we invested in a company called Tesla before Elon Musk joined, and unfortunately, we sold all our shares in 2008, but kind of shows like the type of company that we want to support, and that type of company that we want to locally support to entrepreneurs to build in Southeast Asia as well. And across like these different sectors, we support companies in clean energy generation, energy efficiency, electric mobility, huge attention on energy storage, especially in Indonesia, with a lot of battery companies investing in Indonesia because of the nickel reserves. We'll do a lot of smart grid work, so helping utilities to innovate and kind of work with startups and data to figure out how to make their grids more resilient and cleaner as well. And we've been diving into a lot of decarbonization and agri-tech, and the food systems are definitely a part of that as well. So in terms of the actual activities that we do, a lot of it is business training. So in terms of the launch activities, it's really about working with universities, enabling researchers to, we will go into like the different universities in each country. We'll figure out what researchers are working on. We'll figure out what undergrad and master's students are concerned about, and then we'll help them to launch new businesses, right? So we'll run these like kind of boot camps, we'll run hackathons, we'll have people ideate together, form teams, and work towards challenges, solutions to challenges together. The Accelerate is more support for existing companies. So even if they have like, you know, a few customers, like how do they really grow domestically, right? Like how do they get that new round of funding that they're looking for in order to scale up their business, right? So that's the kind of support that we'll do. We run a few of our own funds, like very small ones and mostly catalytic in nature, which means like our metric is to measure how much private sector capital we can also convince to invest into climate and energy solutions. And then the scale up work, working with larger corporates in each of these countries. So especially in Southeast Asia, a lot of industries are run by larger companies. So how do we enable our startups and innovators to partner with large corporations in order to scale up? And then we'll do a lot of the ecosystem building work. In each country, we have like a bi-monthly Connects event where it will start to be more in person as well, but a lot of it was virtual. So these are kind of like events that you can join to learn from different industry leaders. It could be fireside chats or panels like this as well. So just to highlight one program that we're running in Thailand right now, Decarbonize Thailand Sandbox. So we have lined up a few of the larger corporate partners within the country and kind of done a needs assessment on what their types of solutions they're looking for. And then we'll source globally for different energy and climate solutions and startups that work in those areas. And then we'll give them like a 3-month sandbox to work with the corporate partner, and then like at the end of the year showcase like the projects that they've done together. Just to show a number of the different types of startups we supported, and on the left hand side you can tell the different types of industries and the categories. So in the built environment space, like a lot of IoT, energy efficiency type companies, energy access, like we supported a number of companies in both Indonesia and the Philippines working on energy access. Energy finance, the previous speaker talked about how to allocate finance for the climate sector. So there's a number of tools and different startups specifically focused on that. And then anything between industrial energy efficiency, agri, and transportation will also support. So just to show our Indonesia One Fund, it's a very small fund, but catalytic fund investing into clean energy companies and startups in Indonesia. So to date, we've deployed about 1.3 million and catalyzed another 18 million in co-investment, as well as follow-on investment into the same companies. So right now we're trying to grow that into a Southeast Asia-wide fund. And you know, just to show how we measure the impact of our work, a combination of economic measurements like the jobs created, green jobs created, the revenue generated from our portfolio companies, environmental measures as in like the megawatt hours of renewable energy put on the grid, the greenhouse gas reduction from all of their products and services, and then also social metrics. We really try to employ and support women to get into the clean energy and climate sectors, as well as the number of households provided with energy access. So I'll just pause there. That's what I wanted to share about the organization, and happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thank you very much, Stanley. So I think now we've heard from all three speakers. So we'll move on to the next section of the session, which is question and answers. But I guess there are a number of questions from my side. So we've heard the different perspective from Dr. Vong. If I can just summarize what Dr. Vong mentioned earlier on. So he gave us an introduction on ASEAN cooperation, the governance of the different cooperation on climate change across the different sectors within ASEAN. And he also shared with us the different programs for youth and also the platform for youth participation and engagement, which has reflected the importance of youth involvement in a regional cooperation setting. And this really to inspire youth in general to explore opportunity in terms of participating in a regional platform. And I think he emphasized that on two things, which was that climate finance doesn't happen by itself, and it doesn't necessarily come from the government. And he encouraged to reach out to multilateral agency to have a more impactful action. And I think he wrapped up he wrapped up clearly on the important role of youth, which is a vital asset in safeguarding the environment. And then we heard from Mrs. Zaim, our second speaker. Mrs. Zaim shared about Brunei's exciting upcoming ASEAN Center for Climate Change in collaboration with all the other 9 ASEAN member states. And he further shared Brunei's national initiatives, including the Brunei National Climate Change Policy and also Protocol Hijau as an initiative for the government to lead by example. He further shared on the collaboration with a local bank through an MOU, which has allocated a 2 billion funding and financing. He also mentioned a good point there where the importance of platform for youth participation through exchanges platform and even providing solution like creating an app. Yeah, and then we heard a while ago from Mr. Stanley on New Nexus Energy, on their role in terms of organizing, the role of their organization to support entrepreneurs with fund and accelerators. This is really crucial. And the fact that they invested in Tesla before Tesla was even known, and now they lost all their shares. I think that's really important that for an investor to really look at projects which contribute to climate solutions, especially now through startup, which is mainly being driven by our youth. So in order to achieve, when I'm trying to wrap up all these the points raised by our 3 different speakers, coming from their different capacities and the organizations that they represent, in order for us to achieve a 1.5 degrees temperature limit, we really need to narrow the current gap funding in funding. And in order to accelerate decarbonization efforts, we need fund. And of course, there's global fund like the Green Climate Fund, by developed countries like Zaim mentioned earlier on. But access to these funds are not necessarily straightforward. So this is why the alternative form of funding like grassroots funding becomes really important, especially for our grassroots drivers on climate solution. So very broadly, grassroots funding just refers to the method of raising funds by the public, usually for someone who is not so well known or perhaps to raise funds for a common cause. So this is just the broad definition. So if I can just pose this question to all of our 3 speakers. So when a public should look out, or our youth here, our young silly participants this evening, if they were to look out for a particular project, what would be a criteria that they will be able to, for them, what would be the element of a criteria that they should look for in order to, for the climate project to be supported under grassroots funding. Maybe Dr. Wong, if you can just share your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much, Dina. I think it's quite important and practical question that, all of you really want to know money, where is money? So I think money is not easy in certain way, but money easy if you follow some of the steps from my view. First step is about yourself. If you just come and asking money, the money will not come to you unless you know what you're going to do. The most important, your passion and what is your target. Clearly try to make that happen and show that you are really made that. At the end of the day, it's still in the way consideration, cost benefit somehow, even non-profit and so on and so forth. So first thing, try to be firm yourself. Listen to your heart where you want to achieve and what you want to do with that sort of, if you have money. So it's not looking money first and then start doing things. So I may say, start to focus whatever you think of. And then, from that, you have to tap into different sources. So start first, that is the key critical, what is your passion about? So now I'm focused on what you should focus on, the passion that to access with the grassroots sort of innovative support. I think from the community itself, it's it's quite hard to coordinate and makes a big impact on the mitigation side. So with that, I think a lot of things are fun available here and there through different channels. I think I may encourage the youth looking at the local solution for building sort of resilient and climate adaptation rather than GAG emission, because you will not make any sort of great impact. But if you want to do the GAG emission, that may be in the form of outreach activity to reach specific thing to transform something, the key sector. But in general, from the grassroots level, you may wish to consider, the aspect of, climate adaptation, loss and damage that can support the community, build community stronger and resilient. Even the insurance kind of thing with regard to the climate change, I think this is one of the key areas you may wish to tap in. So the third point I want to make is not really about, who provide money. You have to think of yourself as well, follow your passion. It's about, sometimes a social enterprise can happen. It doesn't make the money come from the sky. It maybe starts something small. It's still beautiful rather than you just dreaming and then looking back for money. It may not be easy. Okay, that's from my experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wong. I think that we heard Dr. Wong loud and clear. He was saying that what's important is that you need to know what you want to focus on and to focus on the cause that you want to push for, and try to focus on the ones that would bring great impacts, not just on mitigation, but also on adaptation measures. I think that's really an important point there. So Dr. Wong will have to leave very soon. So we'd like to give opportunity perhaps for 5 minutes for those who would like to ask Dr. Wong any questions. So we'll just open the floor for if there's any specific questions that we'd like to address to Dr. Wong before he leaves. You can either ask in the chat box, or you can just state your name and where you're from.
I can ask a question for Dr. Fong before he goes. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Dr. Fong, I was really curious, right? Like, how does the ASEAN Secretariat work with grassroots organizations? Or does ASEAN Secretariat only work with policymakers and intergovernmental relationships, right? Because we are all probably smaller players in the climate reality scene, and we're trying to make a difference collectively across ASEAN, right? Is there any way of establishing relationships with the ASEAN Secretariat from grassroots organizations across the ASEAN region, or is that something not worth doing?
I think ASEAN Secretariat really value the grassroots and community sort of approach, and among other, you may find out in our ASEAN climate change state report. It really point out very clear about the way that ASEAN should do. It means that focus with the local solution and local community. So that's really clear about the priority of ASEAN. However, from ASEAN Secretariat side, I really thank to this question because that to provide clear-cut answer. ASEAN Secretariat doesn't work with the grassroots community directly. So the way we work with the governance structure, where we can, with ASEAN member states that join in that sort of working group, the senior official level and so on, that is to provide sort of coordination sort of matter and communication and put, agree on the common sort of perspective and priority that ASEAN should do. While the other thing, I mean, a lot other thing that do by the country and local city level. So, but I mean, with our focal point, our governance structure, that's the way we believe the communication, coordination, and outreach at the country level reach out across the board. So it's not only within the ministry or agency in charge for climate change. So that's the way we work. I mean, from the program of action or work plan of the AWG CC climate change, this really recognize all that sort of community involvement, including youth. So for this reason, I believe this is a great opportunity for everyone to take part. But I mean, the second thing ASEAN Secretariat can do, I mean, through the project and program that funded by partner, where we can have such as, pilot activity or particular sort of capacity building to specific target communities, see how the thing can bring this to policy in order to, a big sort of picture consideration. So that sort of aspect, I think it's that ASEAN Secretariat doing. But I mean, you're right, we are more or less at the policy level, but also the way we can also shape from the policy level to think about where the resource mobilization should go. For example, with the state of climate change report, this is the way indicate the community really important. I end my answer here, but I apologize for all the two other panelists that I take the floor because I need to leave early. I'm sorry because I just on the way to approving.
Thank you.
So any final, yeah.
Is there any more questions for Dr. Wong? I think Dr. Wong, there's a question on the chat from Diana Ng from Brunei. Her question is that how can youth get involved at ASEAN level besides attending events like ASEAN+3 or ASEAN You Can or competitions? How do we get to become someone like you? I'm not sure whether this is so maybe if you can share insights in terms of how youth can actually get involved in ASEAN platform.
I think you are right. I mean, the different sort of expectation of youth, I really recognize that, and the declaration is make really important the way forward for the youth on climate change. So it's just about the way how youth can translate this into action, translate this into mobilize sort of group that to make things more important. You not need to wait passively for the ASEAN leader to give you opportunity. So I mean, like chicken and egg, sometimes you need to do something. If you see this really opportunity, do and show the case. And then this bring that to the real experience. The leader need also your input. When you provide really added value rather than, or evidence-based sound sort of information, that's the way they need. They listen like the old people listen to children. That is a normal way. And if you have that sort of clear, rational with that sort of sound information, I believe that the way it happened. So now, I think to make it happen, translate this declaration into action. How to do that? I think this is the way you need to discuss among you, use all your asset and your strength, and then I believe this is the way forward to not only from the government sector alone to provide you the opportunity. And I mean the social enterprise or starting the way you work with digital sort of technology that to do things from you, that one thing, but may not be enough from my point. That is, I reiterate my early point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vong. I see hands up from Philippines. Mr. Andy, is your question directed to Dr. Vong? Okay, yeah, you may take the floor.
Okay, but I saw actually Aris raise his hand first. I'm giving him the first opportunity to ask a question. Aris?
Yeah, I'll give the floor to Aris because his question is for Stanley.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Bong, I'm Andy. I represent Philippines. I come from the Philippines, but I'm actually just curious on the policy level under the Environmental Division of ASEAN Secretariat as pertaining to the challenges, like, you know, the principle of non-interference in the ASEAN region, right? But what if other countries, other states in the ASEAN are not really in line with the policies of, you know, the Environmental Division, for example, because, you know, they're still not at par with the international standards pertaining like to decreasing carbon footprint, for example, like internationally. What if other members of the ASEAN are not in line with the policy? So how do you resolve those challenges or conflicts? Or are there even instances where it's happening right now? So I'm just curious. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, Andy, your question is really critical for ASEAN, and that's from what is our chapter. We work, I mean, the interference sort of principle of ASEAN. That is the way we work. But that is not far from what is UNCCC principle of the common, but, you know, different sort of responsibility and different sort of capability of the contracting party. So acknowledgement, I mean, in negotiation at the COP26, I mean, some of the parties, it's not like the way we said in terms of common, but different sort of role, responsibility, or capability, and that's the way they spell out. This is the way they want us to do more. But I mean, of course, they have different sort of priority area. So what ASEAN doing? I mean, it's a lot of things that come. I mean, start from food security, start from poverty issues, start from, you know, economic growth from the country. So a number of priorities that happen in their respective sort of country. So with that, ASEAN also work with the differences. ASEAN Secretariat work with differences. OCO work with differences. You may know that it may be slow by default. You know, let do one thing in a home, like, you know, at 2 people, you're easy to coordinate. Let's say 10, become more difficult. Let's say 100, because different idea, different sort of level of, you know, of intervention and support. So the way we do it, we work with differences, and that's not far from the climate change support that all the country as contracting party. So the way we do, we know that at the regional level, we know about data information need, about this really inform about planning, decision-making, investment, and money. And also with that data information, I think about know-how, which is about the capacity. Whether they, you know, sometimes they think this ideal, but how to do that? How to do that is not standalone. It's about the way work integrated sort of approach with all the economic activity. So that is not easy because the governance system, the organizational system, it doesn't fit to one for those sort of issue. I mean, some other country may not have that sort of clear cut. But I mean, in the same time, the other sector also, they have mission to provide, for example, energy security. The mission to produce more energy. The inconsistency of the policy within country, it's still a challenge. That's the reality. But the challenge is that the way we can come up with, a sort of discussion and agree point. At the end of the day, it's still the bargaining power of each sector that in terms, we say easy in terms of coordinate, but at certain moment to get agree point, by default, get the agree point, what is energy sector should do, because every agency, they have their own mission statement, which is not totally mission for climate GAG sort of reduction per se. So that is the real situation. So with ASEAN, the way we do, we come together, we acknowledge the issue, we hold hand together and work together what we need to do more in line with multilateral social environment, UNFCCC, Paris Agreement, and the COP each time that we had come. For example, this time about loss and damage, that in terms of recognition of the issue become significant to different parts of the world, Southeast Asia, no doubt. So that is the real situation, and that's what I can say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong, just before you leave, can we have just 1 minute for a group photo with you? Okay, so can I pass over to Lestrina for the group photo?
All right, everyone, please turn on your cameras. All right, smile. 1, 2, 3. All right, one more. 1, 2, 3. All right, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Wong.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wong. It's such a pleasure having you, and it's really nice to see you again here. If there's any other questions addressed to you, so we'll get the organizer to email it to your office. Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All the best of luck and success for for the youth group, and continue your pathway and your endeavors. That I think your passion will reveal the success. So including the youth declaration last year. So all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on. So we only have 20 minutes left, and so we'll move on to question and answers from the floor. So we have quite a number of people asking for the floor. If I can just pass the floor to Mr. Aris. I believe he has question addressed to Stanley. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dina. Good evening. Hi, Stanley. I just want to say that I like your presentation. It's very near my heart because I'm also an entrepreneur. So my question is a little bit entrepreneurial. So, as an entrepreneur, it's usually a challenge for us to recover the investments because it's really, it requires a lot of, money and equity. And I saw in your presentation that you have this sort of impact measurements. How do you really ensure that the ventures you support usually do not pass it on to the farmers, for example, or the consumers, which usually, for example, here, when you do a solar panel or a good energy, it's usually the consumers or the farmers who bear the brunt or pay a lot of price for that investment. So because they're actually the users. How do you balance that equity that you mentioned in your presentation between the venture, yourself, and the consumers or the farmers? Do you have any mechanism for that? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So for us, we're an entrepreneurship support organization. So we do the business training. We enable entrepreneurs to build up the business and get to the next level at whatever stage they're at, right? So, I mean, in terms of what, like we enable them with like the kind of knowledge and maybe like some initial funding, but ultimately it's up to all of these renewable energy companies to price their business models, their products and services to cater to their local communities, right? So we don't really dictate like exactly what business model they go with. Yeah. I don't know if that answers it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, is there any questions from the floor? You can just unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and to which speaker you'd like to address your question to. I'm also checking the chat box. I think I just would like to just read one of the questions raised in the chat box. I think by Gurpreet Singh. So she was asking any of the speakers on what sort of opportunities there might be for climate reality leaders who are participating in the Waisili Summit, and what sort of proposals that might be looking for this year. So maybe, I don't know if Zaim, if you'd like to take that question from Gurpreet.
Hi, Lina. Sorry, could you repeat that question? I might not fully understand what that one meant.
Gurpreet, are you here, Gurpreet? Would you like
Yes,
to?
no, I'm always here. No, I was just wondering, right, since it's about
Okay.
climate financing, and we have close to 70 amazing climate reality leaders over here in this group. And I was wondering, like, on behalf of them and us, also, we might be the organizers, but we are also part of the same crew, right? Trying to fight and mitigate the consequences of global warming and serve for adaptation. What opportunities are there for us, right? From your organizations, like wondering, like, what are you looking for? Who are you looking for? What sort of proposals are, is it that you have appetite for at this moment, so that we can also have food for thought and food for ponder? Saying $2 billion, I mean, that's really great, but it's a really huge number, and it's really vast, and it's hard to comprehend, right? But like, what's making you guys think? What sort of projects are you expecting, and are you waiting to see on your tables, right? Basically.
Yeah, that's a very good question and very fully loaded. So let me try to unpack that a little bit. I think initially there was a question also to Dr. Wong Sok around, if let's say for you guys, if you were to invest or actually provide funding to people who actually talk about this, what would it be for? And I'll answer a little bit about what criteria we're looking into and what key strategic projects could fall into place. I just want to answer that first question around, as a member of the public, before you look out, what should you look out before you decide to support a climate project is, it really depends. Of course, if you're an investor, you tend to see the dollar signs and what's your margin of return. But I want to change that around a little bit. I want everyone to always start with why, right? Because there's always that concern about greenwashing, be it by someone or companies that are less well known. So I think when we talk about potentially when we talk about these people or companies that could potentially use funds to be spent on climate projects, or those that would reduce emissions or for sustainability, I think it'd be good to know some things. So like the scope of the project, first of all, what value, what impact it brings, which sector is it trying to penetrate? And of course, when they actually have a plan and a schedule for execution, trying to understand by when will they actually achieve the outcomes or the value of the impact that they're looking in. And I guess for peace of mind, it's also knowing the review and assurance or the validity of what they're trying to execute. But I guess, because we're talking about climate change, and it has a huge impact on not just ourselves, but the future generation. So I think if you want to participate or provide funding to these kind of people or organizations, in this case, I would say, look at purpose over profit. So I think that would be one thing I want the people here to know. But to your other question around, for youth leaders here, what kind of criteria would we be looking for? What kind of projects? I mean, it's vast. I think there's so many things we've just, reached the tip of the iceberg at the moment. In terms of criteria, especially, and I saw a question in the chat box. In our case, for the MOU, we're working with that bank to actually develop joint agreed screening criteria, right? So on their side, they have certain value drivers to meet. On our side, we have our own. And I mentioned our BNCCP, where we have those 10 key strategies that, when executed and fully adopted, hopefully by our general target year, will be able to bring those emissions down. So those value drivers should actually align to those, and the projects that we do should actually be able to help us achieve those outcomes. So we have some projects, for example, to reduce our industrial emissions, be it through decarbonization, deployment of renewable energy, large scale, small scale. Youth could begin going entrepreneurial into this space. We talk about reforestation, afforestation. Brunei, we have the company that began the tree planting app, and so on and so forth. We talk about, for example, EVs. Those fundings can also be used to incentivize or provide grants, whether it's for research or subsidies, and the list goes on. And really, the youths are our key stakeholders in this case. There's the passion, there's the movement. And I think there will be avenues here when you look at the entire value chain, be it as a customer, as a supplier, or the firm itself. I hope I've answered that question there. I did mention earlier in the chat box a quote I really like, and that's why I think the youths, when you ask these questions, it really rings true. No, we can't do this alone. So if we want to go fast, we go alone. But if we want to go further, we go together. And I really believe these kind of platforms will enable that. I think it's not just one young person, it should be a group of youths. And I'm really heartened to see the number of people here and the diversity on offer as well, all from within ASEAN. I hope that answers your question, G.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Zaim. So if I can just pose the same question to Stanley, but perhaps an addition from me. Besides the criteria that was asked by Gurpreet earlier on, so are you open to all the countries being represented here in terms of support for funding?
Yeah, so for us, like funding is a small part of what we do, because like for us, like we're not like like a primary investor. Like our funds like are quite small, and like that's part of the support. But primarily we would support individuals to create businesses. So like Zaim mentioned, like, if you have ideas, right, like you can come to us and we would help you flesh that out into an actual business, right? Like in renewables and energy efficiency and electric mobility. Like these are very like hot areas and areas that will continue to grow, right, going forward. Like energy and climate, like entrepreneurship, we feel is one of the key pillars to addressing climate change. Sure, we have like Dr. Vong Sok and all these other guys like working on the policy level at the secretariat. We have a lot of different NGOs like working on reducing fossil fuels and like reducing the use of coal, right? But for us, like we feel after you get rid of all those fossil fuels, there needs to be like a whole army of new businesses and new entrepreneurs working to provide new renewables and other services like that is going to take its place, right? And it's like everyone in this room, right? Like a lot of our program managers and some of the entrepreneurs that we support are YCLE alumni, right? So you guys have like so much of the knowledge and so much of the network to be able to do this successfully, right? So my call to action would be like to reach out, like whether it's to like understand more about the specific business models that are available. We have everything packaged up into what we call the business model in a box, so you can take and learn from existing ones and kind of customize it to your own country, or you can do like some of our online courses as well. And then feel free to reach out and see and we will definitely see how we can do what we can do to support you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Stanley. So all of you there, Stanley has just offered if you want to reach out to him. So yeah, so he just shared all the details there in the chat box. We're almost at the closing, but I'll just take two more questions from the chat box. If we do not have any question from a direct question from the floor, I'll just continue reading from the chat box. So Lastrina have a question for both Zaim and Stanley. So for Zaim, she was asking if you could expand a bit more on the MOU between the government, the Brunei Islamic Bank, and the council, and how can Brunei youth participants get more involved and apply for the funding?
Thank you for the question, Lastrina. I might have covered a little bit of it in the response to G earlier, but I'll capture some things else from there. I think the MOU, it has been a discussion. In fact, last year already, I think Dina was privy to that conversation. So really the MOU in itself, one thing now, I think, we always talk about energy players, oil and gas players having to do more because they are the dirty industry players, right? But you see here the social consciousness has reached beyond. So banks, I think they know that they have to be involved in areas of sustainability. And for BIBD, they're no different than most banks around the world. You'll hear the pitch from Standard Chartered and a few others that they're keen to help achieve, at least for the UN, the Sustainable Development Goals, but also in reality to help fight the climate crisis because they have a far-reaching network. They have customers, they have suppliers, they themselves are a big organization. And they themselves see their own ways to reduce their emissions. They have a lot of machines, a lot of brick and mortar banks. So they're looking at ways to partner up and reduce that. And what better way to do so than partnering with the agents of change? From the amount that they put aside, so $2 billion, they're keen to see what kind of strategic projects we have. And this is where Dina has no chance but to be joined at the hip with us. She's leading the Sustainable Energy Division, and there's a lot of renewable energy initiatives happening on her end, both small scale and large scale, be it at private residences, big buildings. So these are ways we actually want to reach out to them and see how we can partner up, also lessen the load on even from the government for the initial capital expenditures. Similarly, I think in terms of what we should be looking for in that partnership should be the impact that we want to leave behind. And impact can be an ambiguous definition here. So it really depends on what people think impact could be. The impact could be, in this case, aside from funding for physical infrastructures or key projects from start to finish, it should also be strategic or for positioning. It could be, for example, scholarships. So these are just me throwing ideas out, which we haven't fully agreed on, but it could be scholarships where we send folks to be trained, to be upskilled for climate competences and bring them in. And what better way to signify the intent, but through giving knowledge and sharing them for the longer term. So those are some of the ways that we believe we could partner up between ourselves and BIBD in the MOU.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Zaim. So moving on to the next one. So for Stanley, so Lastrina is asking on the investing to date 1.3 million and 18 million in co-investment into Indonesia alone. Can you share some insights on how you identify what portfolios to invest into and what environmental measures look like? I think this is quite similar to the ones previously asked, but perhaps if you want to just respond very briefly on this one.
Yeah, sure. So we have the accelerator program, and then we have the fund, right? So we require all our companies that we potentially invest in to go through the accelerator. That's like part of the due diligence process where we get to know the team, their capabilities, like how well they're working in terms of business and technical capabilities. And then after that, we will then pass them on to the investment team, and then maybe they'll talk about the investment side of things. So yeah, that's what we do. And then for each investment, we always look for private sector investors to also co-invest at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. So before I wrap up, we'll just take one last one. Then I think we've covered all the questions tonight. So the last one is from Nurishan, addressed to Zaim. So this is asking if the Climate Change Secretariat adopts the ISO guideline to measure the KPIs for the 10 key strategies. And she mentioned here that, as you stated, government play a major role in greenhouse gas emissions on national level. In your perspective, do you think our strategies can be achieved in line with the Paris Agreement in reducing emission by 50% in 2030? So that's, I believe that's a global target, right? Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Norisan. So I think to answer the first question, there are some key targets already set out by BCCS. So when the policy was rolled out, it canvassed the entire guideline to say what we intend to achieve, and if fully adopted, how much emissions we can reduce from BAU levels. Furthermore, after that, BCCS actually had framing workshops to really identify, and there's actually an operational document which itemizes line by line what we should achieve. I'm not sure, to be fair, and maybe Dina, you can also interject here whether it's subject to ISO assurance, but we do have, for some of the strategies, it does require external assurances, which at the moment we're working on carbon pricing and sort of establishing a carbon market. If and when we do that, we will need third-party verification. Similarly, for our carbon reporting or GHG emissions reporting, that does require external assurances. But for a lot of them, we also self-regulate, for the number of trees that we plant, the number of fleets, the number of EV fleets that we sell. So it really depends on which particular part of the strategy that we want to measure. But for the second one, and Dina, I'll probably save some time at the end in case you do want to add something there. But for the second one, I believe it's 45%, but it's nice that you've added it to 50%. We should be more ambitious. Do I think we can achieve it? I would like to believe yes, because one, we didn't come up with the plans, at least internally in Brunei, out of thin air. They're based on data, they're based on competitive advantages. Of course, when you look at 2030, some people say it's far down the line, some people say it's pretty close, but what's important is measuring it in bite-sized year on year. So that way we know, are we on track and are we not? At the moment, we are on some, and we are sort of behind on some of the others. But that's why in totality, if we did look at the BNTCP, it would reduce much more from our side. But of course, when you say the global target, it really depends on the other players that we have. So collaborations across ASEAN, global collaborations. And then of course, how do we leverage on one another? How can developed countries help developing countries? I see your point there. 8 years is not far away. I completely agree. I know some people are a bit more lax, or they say, yeah, I'll worry about that when we get close, which we shouldn't. The idea is to inject the urgency and to build this coalition and change agents to help drive that forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Zaim. I can just add on. So I believe the 50% by 2030 is a global, that's globally where we should be aiming for. So in order for us to stabilize the world temperature to 1.5 degrees, globally, we need to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 50% in 2030, and then a set of net zero by 2050. But right now, with all the pledges being made by more than 100 countries on net zero, it's still not enough to bring that reduction to 1.5. I think right now we're on track at about 2.1 degrees. So for Brunei, we're very small. Our contribution is only 0.025% out of the global greenhouse gas emission. But our pledge for NDC is actually 20% by 2030. And to answer whether or not we can achieve that, I think I agree with what Zaim just mentioned earlier on, because we have set really clear target on how we can achieve that 20%. Yeah. So, but 50% in the next 8 years, I do agree with you. That's quite high in the next 8 years. Yeah, but yeah, that again, that's a global target, and the countries that contributes more greenhouse gas emission, global greenhouse gas emission, needs to do more, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, One very, very last one for Stanley, actually. So do you measure the extent of impact of your investments to the environment?
Yeah, previously during my presentation, I showed like our impact measurement framework, right? So we measure the economic metrics, right? The number of jobs created, etc. Then the environmental and then the social metrics. So definitely environmental metrics are measured, yes, in terms of renewables put on the grid as well as greenhouse gas reductions from our portfolio companies.
Okay, great. Okay, that question is actually from one of our YCD participants tonight. Okay, I think we have we're a bit over time now. So I'll just wrap up very, very quickly. So we heard from Dr. Wong earlier on, and I think he emphasized very clearly that for youth, you really need to know the cause that you want to push and to focus on impactful effort. We heard from Zaim early on as well on the different initiatives that Brunei is taking, and also the different opportunities that youth can take for grassroots participation. And we heard from Stanley on the opportunities for Nexus, New Energy Nexus, to support and also accelerate as an accelerator of green enterprise. I just wish that there's more and more business organizations like New Energy Nexus in the region to support entrepreneurs or businesses with green solutions. I think one of the key takeaways from this evening session is really on not just the funding itself, but what it is actually the solution that youth can bring, and to be innovative, not just for getting the funding, but also how do we actually contribute to the overall movement for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I guess that's it from me for this evening. This is my disclaimer. This is my first time moderating, so I hope that I've been able to address all of the questions that's on the chat box, as well as that was sent to us directly through, I think, Dropbox. But otherwise, I think I would like to thank our speakers. Dr. Wong has left, and thank you, Zaim, and also thank you, Stanley, for all the insights that you shared, and thank you for all the questions from our YCD participants, and thank you again for the organizer for the opportunity. So have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
That was really great. Like, I learned a lot today, and I think it was really brilliant what you guys shared. I love Zaim, your optimism. That was absolutely brilliant. 8 years, we can do it because the future hasn't happened yet. We can create that future that we want, right? And Stanley, really appreciate your sharing. I'm in awe of your organization, and I would love to see the relationships that are built between YCD participants together with New Energy Nexus over the coming 3 months together. Really exciting, and I wish I myself can be part of this. But towards the end, I have to do a short closing announcement for everybody. This won't take more than 3 minutes. I assure you, as always, I get the short end of the straw because like my announcements are boring, right, compared to what you guys have just heard today. So Saturday, Yayasan Rumah Energy and Healthcare Without Harm, 2 other organizations involved in the career fellowships that you guys are going to be partaking in. So whoever's applied to these organizations, I hope you are excited. I hope you know what's going on. Does anyone know what Yayasan Rumah Energy does? You want to share quickly? I give you a minute. Come on. Noresan, why don't you try? What do they do?
I know they do like renewable, they try to empower the vulnerable community. They try to empower the vulnerable community by building like renewable resources in their own community as well. So in turn, it will help to empower them as well.
That's really good. Thank you so much for sharing. You're absolutely right. I can't do them justice myself either. But Yayasan Rumah Energy is amazing. It's a female-run organization in Indonesia. They've created over 30,000 biogas generators across the whole of Indonesia. That is unreal. They've trained tens of thousands of farmers. They've created over 100 social enterprises in Indonesia in the fields of renewable energy, in the fields of sustainable and future farming. You guys are going to have a great time speaking to them, and like, please do your research if you do not know what they do already, as always, because bring your questions to those speakers, right? That's really important. And then we have healthcare without harm. Claire, what does healthcare without harm do? Have you done your research yet? No, okay, no worries. So they're a global-based organization, much like New Energy Nexus. They've got a presence in a lot of continents around the world. You know, the medical industry is polluting, right? Those yellow bins that you see every time you go to the clinic or the hospital, those bins are there every day when you're not even in those hospitals, right? Biotoxic waste is a huge issue. There is a lot of single-use issues that happen in this industry. They are looking to see how this industry can be more circular. There is a lot of initiatives that they run across the globe, even here in Southeast Asia. So this will be the second organization that will be presenting to you on Saturday. So see you there, guys. Please come. It'll be amazing. And as usual, we really hope that you will help us with our impact assessments. As you see, Stanley got asked that question earlier, like, do you measure your impact? You know, we want to measure our impact too, but we can't measure anything if we don't have the data, right? So YCD Summit 2022, please help us. Please submit your surveys. Jordan, you know, you can put this in the chat if you have it handy. That would be really much appreciated. And as always, you guys are free and welcome to hang out in Gathertown. I know some of you have preparations to do. You have a small grants pitch session that's going to happen on Tuesday, right? So that's really exciting. I'll share more about that on Saturday since we don't have much time today. But see you guys in Gathertown. Go hang out, go have fun. There's still 58 of you over here today. Have a really good Thursday. Have a really good rest of the week, and see you on Saturday, right? Take care, YCD Summit. Thank you very much. As you can see, I'm back in Malaysia now, so I have really great internet. So all of you can see me. I'm not in the dark. I'm not sleepy. I'm not tired. You know, it's been really nice being together with all of you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.